Rev up your engines!
Well, Jaguar is recalling thousands of their electric high-paced cars because guess what? Their batteries might explode and start on fire. Gee, this seems like a commonality with electric cars. Now, these are batteries that are made by LG in South Korea. If you remember, the same clowns that made the Chevy electric car batteries that did you recall every single one ever made to replace them. And as usual, they say, and I quote, the high-voltage electric battery may overheat and catch fire. Hey, listen to me, people. Don't go out and buy these electric cars. They are not anywhere near perfection. They don't even know what kind of batteries they're going to use, right? And of course, if you know anything about Jaguars, what is the worst thing about Jaguars? They have crappy electrical systems. They always had. They used to have Lucas electric systems, and all we mechanics and people in the know called Lucas the Prince of Darkness, because you'd be driving your Jag or your Triumph at night, and then all of a sudden the lights would go out because you ran out of electricity. Well, in this case, the whole car's electric. But hey, take a plus on this. At least as you're driving at night, the car will start on fire and you'll be able to see with the flames. A double knower. Don't buy an electric car and don't buy a Jaguar. Put them together, so don't ever buy an I-Pace. Jeff says, if you change the oil every 2,000 miles in a Korean car that's less well-built than a Honda or Toyota, will that make a difference over time? Well, it would make a slight difference, but not much. The problem is the Koreans don't build the engines that well. They use cheaper piston rings, they use cheaper parts, and they have a history of problems with their engines. Now, understand this. If you buy full synthetic oil, which is really good oil, and a long life oil filter, and you change your oil and filter every 5,000 miles, you're not going to get any damage because the oil still hasn't broken down. Some guys will push it to 10. I don't push it to 10. But at 5,000 miles, full synthetic oil has not broken down. So even if you change it to any 2, it ain't going to make any difference in a Korean car. They wear because they're not built correctly, right? I mean, if I owned a Korean car, which I don't and I probably never will, I would change it every 5,000 with full synthetic oil. But that said, I wouldn't buy one in the first place. And if you changed it every 2, it probably wouldn't make any difference at all. Barack Singh says, Scotty, what do you think of Elon Musk saying Cybertruck production is going to be delayed by another year after he took deposits to the truck back in 2019? Well, Elon, he's got some kind of mental problems, and he's a genius, but the whole idea of the Cybertruck is like something Homer Simpson would have made in The Simpsons, that weird station wagon car thing that they had in one of those episodes, right? He promised all kinds of things, which haven't come out. He hasn't built them yet. As far as I'm concerned, it's immaterial these days. It's not really a truck. It's just some goofy looking thing. Oh, who knows? Its quality control's garbage. Guys that buy trucks generally want rough things that can go a long way without wearing out, with driving long distances, pulling heavy weights. Yeah, do that with an electric vehicle, you'll get 80 miles to run out of power. So, he used to say in Texas, he's talking through his hat. Wheelman74 says, Scotty, my 99 Jeep Grand Cherokee has a grinding noise in the rear diff, but only when I'm coasting at high speeds. Yeah, it's wearing out, and this is what happens. When you take your foot off the gas at high speeds, instead of turning and putting all the power back, it's gliding, and it shows that it's starting to wear out. If you plan on keeping the vehicle, I would fix it sooner than later, because if it does blow, then it's useless and you can't rebuild it. But if you're planning on either not keeping it forever, or when it goes, just buy a new differential, go ahead, drive it till it drops. Might go quite some time, right? If you're going to plan on rebuilding it, do it now. Because if it does break, and it comes all apart, then you're going to have to buy a new differential. Astro says, Scotty, why do speedometers overshoot on older trucks? Mine overshoots like 15 at highway speeds, 97 K1500. A lot of times, they weren't set up right. They wanted to give you a false feeling of speed. I remember when I was a kid, we flew somewhere, we rented a car. The speed limit was 65, right? And so we were driving 70, but people were flying by us. I knew that speedometer wasn't calibrated right because people were going by us too fast. Now today, of course, it's not that hard to figure out because today we got cell phones. You put it on GPS, it'll tell you how fast you're going, right? And I've even done that in my own cars. It turns out that my Lexus is actually going faster than what the speedometer says, but the Matrix is going a couple miles an hour slower than what it actually says. So none of them are all that accurate, but today with GPS, GPS, you know. Most good GPS, like the Google one I have, when you have it on Google Maps, it'll show you how fast you're going. So you'll know what the real speed limit is, and you can see if your speedometer's off one way or the other. Hardly any of them are absolutely perfect. Legend says, Scotty, I finally ended up finding holes in my AC lines. If I replace them, will my system be okay? Depends on how much the leak was and how long they sat. If you allow an air conditioning system to lose all the refrigerant, then it's empty. Then wherever the leak is, air's going to get in. Air has water vapor. If it didn't have water vapor, we wouldn't be able to breathe. Our lungs would dry out. If you ever been in the desert, your lungs dry out because it's so dry, right? Well, that water vapor destroys your AC system. And I had people back in Houston, they'd have a car that maybe didn't have AC for years. They want me to fix it. I'd warn them. I'll say, if your system doesn't have refrigerant, you might have to replace everything because there'll be rust in the compressor. The dryer will be clogged up. Expansion valve will probably be rusted shut. A lot of work needs to be done. Now, on the other hand, if yours leaked and you just kept filling it up, but you didn't let it get totally empty, then yeah, you can change the hoses, evacuate the system, change the dryer. You got to change the dryer because you open the system, the dryer's ruined, and then it could be okay. Nerdy Organist says, that's a good one, 2000 Kia Spectra. I always smell gas fumes at the back of the car, but I see nothing leaking. Your engine's probably running rich. Now, you say you smell at the back of the car. Go to the tailpipe. If you smell it coming out of the tailpipe, it's because the car's running too rich. Typical for a Korean car. The fuel injectors will drip. They won't burn all the gas, so you smell fumes coming out of the back. Now, let's say it's not coming out of the tailpipe, and you smell that, but it's coming from under the car there. You probably got a seeping hole or a bad gasket on your gas tank, because the gas tank's back there. And as they age, the rubber seals on the top of the tank can leak, and then they'll start to go bad, especially if you notice that, say you fill your car up with gas, you smell it more, and then when it gets lower, you don't. Then it's definitely a leaky gasket, because then as the gas, when it's full, sloshes, it'll leak out of the top gasket. The gasket's on the top. But when you get lower, it doesn't splash and make it to the top, and then you don't smell anymore. It's a good way to diagnose it. Kenny AFC says, between a Toyota RAV4 and a Honda CR-V, which one should I buy? Well, you pick the best two on the planet. That's kind of up to you, right? They're relatively evenly priced. And of course, here's the thing. What's the biggest selling one? Toyota RAV4. What's the second biggest selling one? Honda CR-V. This is in the United States. So you're picking the best two. My advice is road test them. See which one you like better. Personal preference. They're both good. I'd probably get the Toyota because they generally last a little bit longer, but those Honda CR-Vs last a long time too. What you want to do is drive them. You probably find the CR-V's a little zippier, but the RAV4 has a little cushier ride. Road test them and see which one you like. And of course, if you're talking used and not new, find a good one, whatever you can find. They're not easy to find. You might be able to find one easier than the other, then buy that. Dirk Zink says, have you ever had a car question you couldn't understand? Of course, but not if I was actually talking to someone in person. People write me questions all the time. Now, sometimes they don't make any sense, and I say, look, this doesn't make any sense. Could you explain further? Maybe I'll never hear back from them. But if I'm talking to a human being, no, because if somebody's talking to me, I'll make it sure that they can explain correctly what's wrong. If they say something, they say, okay, well, what do you really mean? I'll show them a picture of the car. What are you talking about? I can show them pictures all different. You mean this part, that part, this part, and then I could explain it. Anything can be explained to anyone if you really want to. Somebody who's any good at explaining could explain to you how, say, nuclear fission works, right? It's complex, but it can be explained to people. As long as the people are there, and if they got I don't understand that. Okay, here, what don't you understand? Okay, this is how this works. When the questions are written, I've got lots of questions that didn't make any sense. And I mean, sometimes it's because the people are, they're in Mongolia or something. Their English isn't that good, but hey, if you're one-on-one with people, you can always figure it out. You can't believe this one until you hear it. Ford is suing Blue Cross Blue Shield over astronomical profit. Okay, now, of course, here's the pot calling a kettle black. Ford keeps raising the prices of their cars and stuff, but they're making them in Mexico where it's cheaper to make it, right? Having astronomical profits, gouging us because they get insurance for their workers through it, right? So Ford's suing them in Michigan and other states saying they ripped us off. Well, hey, let me tell you something. All insurance companies ripped you off. That's the business they're in. They charge money for premium and they make really sure that they don't pay it out. My old roommate in college, University of Illinois, his mother worked for one of the Blue Cross, whatever, and he told me, he said, now, if you're going to make a claim against these guys, you got to find out what their fiscal year is, because the end of each one of their quarters, they have no money left, so they deny almost every claim they get. If you think insurance companies aren't ripping you off, you're out of your mind. They're in the business of ripping you off. They're in the business of taking more money from you than they ever pay back out, right? It's a business. What's Ford whining about? They jack their price prices up. The dealers are ripping people off during the pandemic, you know. Oh, yeah, we got them, but we don't have too many, so you got to pay $5,000 extra, right? Now, they're whining at the insurance companies, right? It'll be interesting to see where this one goes. Hi, Zendirect says, why are Uber drivers in the city usually slow and timid drivers? Well, I don't know. I've seen some pretty fast ones. We had some fast ones in Chicago. But, of course, if somebody's making a living driving a car, they don't want to get it wrecked, and they're not going to drive fast because they want to get better gas mileage. They're paying for the gas. You're not paying for the gas, right? They're doing it for a living. They're not in a big, giant hurry. They don't want to wear their vehicle out faster, and they don't want to get involved and say if there's a wreck, people get injured, insurance is going to have to pay for it, they could be sued. So it's a more logical thing for somebody to do that if they're going to be driving, especially inside the city. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.